When I was in middle school, I would often visit the public library that was a couple of blocks down the street. In the children's section, they had a few dozen computers that kids could use for 60 to 90 minutes per day to do online research for homework or a school project. Or just play video games. One of these video games that I remember playing the most was Need for Madness. Initially, I remember seeing someone play this game and ask them what that game was and where to play it, and when I started playing it myself, I distinctly remember being unable to beat it in under 90 minutes. The computer would time me out, the save progress was deleted, and I'd have to try again the next day. If Need for Madness was a lengthy RPG, that would be a problem. Fortunately, it's a racing/wasting game that anyone can beat in under 90 minutes, if they know what they're doing. So, what's the plot of Need for Madness? You are framed for a murder you didn't commit. You are a speedway champ named Jensen Ames, and you find yourself arrested and sent to Terminal Island, the country's toughest prison. You're given an unexpected chance at freedom when the warden offers you a choice: compete in the death race, or rot in a cell forever. No, wait, that's the plot for 2008's Death Race, starring Jason Statham. The reality is that this game has next to no story whatsoever. Closest to an antagonist in this game is a disembodied floating head who identifies himself as Coach Insano, and based on his commentary throughout the overall game, I guess he takes a certain maniacal pleasure in seeing cars get At its core, Need for Madness gives you two choices during races: to race or to waste, to waste or to race. These are the questions. These are the red and blue pills of Need for Madness, and you can't really go wrong with either choice. The cars in Need for Madness are an assorted box of chocolates, each with their pros and cons. Some are made for racing, others are made for wasting. And as you progress further in Need for Madness and unlock cars every other race, the convergence begins to happen until you have a couple of cars that can do both. The tracks in this game, for the most part, make your decision to race or to waste mostly painless. Tracks with several laps and an ovoid shape are ideal for wasting, and you're more than able to disrupt cars that aren't going to finish the race anytime soon. Tracks with only one or a few laps are ideal for racing, and blisteringly fast cars will have very little to worry about, as long as they don't get hit. But the AI in this game doesn't really make it easy for you. A couple of cars in this game, or trucks if we're being specific, exist primarily to turn your car into your own personal flaming hearse. And you can't underestimate them either. They will make you humble. They can lie in wait, ready to ambush you if you drop your guard. They can go rogue and disobey basic racing rules by driving backwards in the hopes to get into a head-on collision. They can even outright chase you down, waiting to capitalize on a mistake that you make. And in this game, one mistake can get you... I guess that's why this game is called Need for Madness. Right before you even start your first race, or by looking for the instructions when you pause the game, Coach Insano will write down how to play the game and everything else you need to know to race or to waste. Up and down arrow keys serve to accelerate and brake. Left and right arrows serve to steer, naturally. Spacebar serves as both as a handbrake and as your best friend when performing death-defying acrobatics. Because when you're airborne, pressing the spacebar and any of the arrow keys allows you to do stunts. And the stunts you can do are as varied as your imagination. You can do front flips, back flips, roll spins, 360s, 720s, 900s, a combination of any of them, and even. Whatever that is. You will need to perform stunts to restore your power meter, which is continuously draining as you continue to drive. Power in this game determines both your car's top speed, particularly if you're racing, and your wasting strength, which can outright Hercules check a car attempting to ram right into you from the opposite direction. Some advice on performing stunts. You don't need a ramp to get airborne and do a stunt. If a car pit maneuvers you and you're sent on a tailspin, you'll usually get some power out of it once you center yourself. Helpful, but not something I would recommend relying on as you'll still take damage. And you don't want to get hit by the heavyweights of Need for Madness. Also, know your vehicle's acrobatic limits. While one car in this game is able to pull off a double backflip off of a dirt ramp disguised as a speed bump, another car can barely pull off a backflip on a traditional ramp. One trick that helps heavier or slower cars is to backflip and roll spin simultaneously. This maneuver gives you the most amount of lift and power, but only if you land on all fours. Because if you land on your roof, you get a bad landing.
You lose! Good day, sir!
Well, only if you get when you're briefly vulnerable. And when you take damage, either from racing or wasting, there are rings that you can drive or fly through, usually 1 or 2 per stage, that'll fix your car right up in the blink of an eye. So if you're either racing or wasting and you need to repair yourself, just make like Sonic the Hedgehog, go fast, and breathe a sigh of relief. Unless you outright overshoot the ring. And before I forget, there are also buttons to toggle the map and speedometer on screen. Also a button to toggle if you're focusing on checkpoints to drive through, or cars to waste. But keep in mind that there is a track near the end of the game where you can't rely on this indicator. This is the part of the review where I have to get critical and do some wasting of my own. The graphics aren't pretty. I'd hesitate to say that they're a notch above Bubsy 3D. The sky and the floor often blend together. The track selection, while assorted, doesn't really offer anywhere near the color, complexity, and diversity of far superior racing games, such as Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. The cars themselves are unquestionably the most impressive visual aspect of Need for Madness. Each car has a distinguished appearance and statistics that simultaneously reflect their key attributes, and despite their low polygonal count, they also show damage. Can't say that about the first half of Gran Turismo games. Now, normally, these critiques would doom a modern game, but Need for Madness is far from modern. It's a 3D browser game that runs on Java and is well over a decade old. It was also primarily developed by Omar Wali, founder of Radical Play. Also fun fact, Need for Madness is a spiritual successor to an older game he made called Maniac Racers as far back as 2003. Maniac. Not only that, but this game is entirely free! You can just Google it and download it from radicalplay.com. It's worth anyone's time, really. And who knows, if a new Need for Madness game is made in the near future and is sold on Steam. Just like the graphics of Need for Madness, the sound also shows its age in 2020. However, while the graphics have aged like milk, the sound has aged more like wine. The dialogue of Code Insano, the sound effects of mashing metal, both are perfectly serviceable. The car engine sound effects are substandard at best, especially because each car sounds the same. You'd think there would be a difference in engine sounds between the smallest and largest vehicles in the game. The music, on the other hand, if I could describe this game's soundtrack in one word, it would be underrated. I didn't begin to grow a fascination with video game music until I was in high school, but I do recall the soundtrack for this game being a soundtrack that I would occasionally replay in my head. The melodies are catchy and, quite frankly, are probably the strongest attribute of this game in immersing you into the game world. The music is remarkably diverse as well. You feel like you're being welcomed into the world of Need for Madness in the first stage. There's a Wild West aura in the second stage. The third stage feels like you're part of the in-group. The fourth stage feels like your entrance to the Pro Leagues. The fifth stage cherry-picks a relentlessly aggressive vehicle from Satan's Garage. The sixth stage admirably remixes Pen and Narrow by Pet Shop Boys. Whew, you breathe a sigh of relief in the seventh stage. You achieve ludicrous speed in the eighth stage. You become introduced to the bastard love child of a muscle car and a monster truck in the ninth stage, only to conquer it in the 10th stage. And then you celebrate your victories in the 11th and final stage with a party before driving into the sunset. Because this game can be beaten in a couple of hours at the most, and you'll have unlocked every stage and vehicle at that point, the replay value comes in how unpredictable this game is when you're racing or wasting. You can choose to try to beat each stage with each car, or to waste in races that are over in a single lap. Or you can sink your teeth in Need for Madness 2, which is basically the director's cut of the first game. You have several new and returning vehicles to race and waste in, as well as several new cars to pick from, in addition to all of the cars from the first game. The vehicles themselves are quite the mixed collection of Hot Wheels cars. You have sports cars to station wagons to compact cars to Formula 1 racers. You have trucks to Batmobiles to cop cars to... Anyway, There's even a vehicle that resembles the car used by Han in Tokyo Drift, as well as one used by Tony Stark in Iron Man 3. In addition to the new cars, the entire soundtrack is new, and Amar Wali doesn't miss a beat with this collection of underrated oral gems. My personal favorite track belongs in Stage 6's The Stretch. Just like the original Need for Madness, there are a couple of remixes to existing songs. You can hear elements of Orinoco Flow by Enya, and Everybody in the Place by The Prodigy in Stage 9. Need for Madness 1 and 2 are cult classics of video games, ancient browser games that you can download for free and install. You don't even really need a powerful gaming PC to play them. Hell, I played the first game on a piece of crap library computer over a decade ago. There's even a multiplayer mode, as well as the ability to make your own car and tracks. Sadly, I've never touched these functions, so I don't really have a place in this video to review those. Overall, I would recommend anyone and everyone to play this game. The learning curve is virtually non-existent. The game is beatable in an afternoon. It is free. It takes about as much space as a mini album. And lastly, it's just plain fun. It's been fantastic to revisit this little gem of a game, and equally fantastic to analyze this game to the best of my ability in order to recommend and justify playing it. All I can really say now is that you finished Need for Madness. You're awesome. You're truly a radical, maniacal gamer. Now get up and dance!